لو تخينا مسكنو فلنا فريه لنا تطعلنا
سلام أبرح حقن كاروان تركبو تهاتاتلتي ቴለቪዥን ኤሪሳት ከመይ ቀኒኹም
مأعلى
سرتي أفرح نحب فرح نزيفر.
Dear Erisat viewers, we have a special guest today. My guest today is Mr. Kofi Koranteng. He is a 2024 presidential hopeful, Republic of Ghana. Mr. Kofi, welcome to Erisat, Eritrean Television.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Mr. Kofi, today you and others are celebrating Africa Day in Los Angeles. Let's start. What is Africa Day and why are you celebrating today?
Well, and thanks for having me on your show. And greetings to the entire families all over the world. Today is a beautiful day here at Thunderbird School. We've celebrating Africa Day because we realize how important Africans in the diaspora play to the development of Africa. And this is a platform to bring about the recognition and also the realization that somehow we haven't been taken for granted. And in going into the new world order, as we see the world change, the whole focus has become Africa. Everywhere you go, everybody's talking about Africa. So we talk and we celebrate today to let Africans at home and Africans in the diaspora also know how important now that Africa is on the stage. The whole world is turning back to Africa. The platform for the new world order cannot be without Africa. But in order for Africans to exploit, to take advantage of this global explosion that is finding its way to Africa, we need to recognize it and do the things that are important to position Africa and Africans in a way to benefit from this explosion. Because if we don't recognize it for what it is, if we don't change the way we've done business, if we don't change the way that leadership have acted and played its role in creating a platform for Africans to meet their aspirations, then the opportunity will pass us by, and we will at this time around is going to be pretty swift. We will not get anything from this explosion. So the celebration is to bring about an awareness that yes, the game is coming home, but it comes with a realization of a responsibility that Africans need to not just sit and think that just because the game is coming home, it's going to be ours, or because it's coming home, we have an advantage over anybody else. The advantage will only go to the person who is prepared, very well prepared, so that they could take advantage of the explosion. So this was a great platform for us to come together and recognize the greatness in us. We've always been great in spite of everything that we've gone through. For us to recognize that, and to enjoy the moment, and then get to work in preparing ourselves for the explosion that is coming to us.
All right, Mr. Kofi. Today is 60 years since African Union, the inception or the creation of the African Union. 60 years. In the last 6 years, what do you think were like the major achievement of this union and the major failures? And then what should we expect as Africans, in this new era? As you have been saying, there is a new world order coming in. And then what should this union learn from its past mistakes and also its achievements?
I think one of the things as Africa that we need to be very conscious of is leadership. Africa has everything. The only missing element that seems to gel everything together for us to have an explosion is leadership. We need to usher in a new breed of leaders, and this is why I am running as president for Ghana. I'm running as a president in the 2024 election because most of the leaders that we have in Africa seems to take the people, the resources, human capital, and the resources that we have for granted. We don't add value. Most of our children, most of our citizens have left Africa in search for greener pastures, where the greenest of pastures really are in Africa. You cannot possibly leave Africa and say you are leaving for greener pastures. That's an oxymoron. So leadership has to change the way it does business. It cannot be business as usual. And one of the mistakes that we have made as Africans is to think that it's better somewhere else. We need to recognize Africa for the greatness that we always have been, but then also get a new breed of leaders who recognize their greatness and is able to cultivate the greatness so that we can be globally recognizable, first for Africans and then for everybody else who wants to enjoy that greatness with Africa.
All right, Mr. Kofi, during your panel discussion, you say that, one of the main challenges in Africa is the leadership problem. And then, most importantly, also, there was no succession plan in many African countries. And probably one of those countries, Eritrea. Eritreans have one president or one leader since 1991. And there is no clear succession plan on the horizon for the Eritrean people. So, and then there is also other countries like Eritrea. I think Ghana is relatively in a better position compared to most African countries. So how do Africans tackle such problems, such, leaders for life, no succession plan? They just only think about themselves and people around them. So how can we tackle these issues? This is because that's the major issue, as you mentioned in your discussion.
Well, we need to go to the table with an expectation, a model of success. Most African governments don't operate with a model of success. The models of success tells you exactly what to expect. If you were to sit with a typical African family and ask them what is it that they think that they deserve or they know for sure they need, they won't be able to tell you. You see? So the so-called leadership have done a disservice in letting the citizens know what to expect. They've done a disservice with that. So they don't know what to expect, number one. And number two, because they don't know what to expect, they don't know what they're fighting for. And because of that, leadership have gotten stale. If you talk about the case of Eritrea, the leadership of Eritrea, been there for decades upon decades. And you could tell from how the country maybe have grown. And you could ask yourself some simple questions. If the people of the country don't know what to expect, then how do they hold the leadership accountable? You see? So it's kind of like a chicken and egg type situation. the people have to know what to expect, what they deserve. If they don't know what they deserve, then they cannot hold the leadership accountable. Now, the leadership, if we don't put the right leadership in, they're not going to let the people know what they expect, because obviously when they take advantage of the people, they serve their mandates, they serve their agendas. And the youth of today, you and I and everybody else who's the youth, we have to fight to change that. And it's a tough thing to do. In Ghana, as we speak, you think people and the ruling parties are favorable to seeing me wanting to maybe come in and make a big splash and change how things are done? No, but we realize and recognize that it has to be done. If we don't do it, if the people of Eritrea, the youth of Eritrea don't come together and fight to bring this change, then you be caught in that vicious cycle. And meanwhile, life is happening. We're not going to get that time back. It's not retroactive, you see. So I believe this is a time, 70% of populations in Africa are the youth. 70% of the most populations in Africa are, or 62% to 70% are in their 20s, 25 or younger. So in the next 15, 20 years, we're going to go from, just in Sub-Sahara alone, in that region, we're going to go from where we are now to 500 million, okay, in the 15, 20 years. We don't have the infrastructure to support. Meanwhile, the leaderships that we have, this is not what it's of concern to them. You never see them going to parliament or having meetings where masterminds are sitting down thinking about what we're going to do for our youth. This is not a conversation they're having. Or the only conversation they're having is how we get power. And then when they get power, they squander the resources. We need responsible leaders to come in who plan for the next 50, 100, 150 years for the children of Africa, so that we become globally competitive. Or this tsunami that's coming, we're gonna miss out on it. Even though it's happening in our backyard, it's gonna happen in our backyard. They're gonna take everything, and before we come to our consciousness, they would have left with everything, and we will still be at ground zero. You see? So this is a time where we're telling the old brigade that enough is enough. They have played their part. We have to retire them, whether they like it or not, because most of them don't have the mental capacities to take us into the next stratosphere of the type of thinking that we need to be globally competitive. You see, it's a fact. And you could look at that by looking at where any of the African countries have been in the last maybe 5, 10 years, 15, 20 years. There's nothing to write home about. They haven't done anything. I could speak for Ghana. If you come to Ghana, you sit in Eritrea and you say, oh, Ghana is a little better. Well, come to Ghana and you will find out that all the glossiness that you see, it's not really glossy as you think. People are really suffering in Ghana, So it's time to change, and we are going to change. We're waiting for the youth to pick themselves up to say enough of this, and we will come together and bring in a new leadership that sees and plans for the aspirations of the youth.
Okay, Mr. Kofi, so you are running for president in Ghana in 2024. When is going to be this presidential election, and in what platform are you running? What are your plans for the people? So what is your campaign planning to do for this election to win?
Well, some of the things we're going to do is we're going to put together what we call the National Development Plan. All the political parties before us come in with what we call a manifesto. Mm-hmm. We don't believe in manifestos because manifestos are party specific. A national development plan is country specific, and it's going to be country specific for the next 20, 30, 50 years at the very minimum. And then we're going to cut government. Government is too huge. It's not efficient. It's not effective. So if you bring in a national development plan that pretty much works on modules, then you don't need human beings to operate in this environment. You replace the human beings with models, success models. Okay, so government is going to be cut. With government being cut, there's going to be surplus money that's going to be put into building the economy when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to governance, when it comes to the society, when it comes to economy, build entrepreneurial, huge entrepreneurial development for the youth, so that the high unemployment with the youth will be absorbed, and we can start creating a middle class, which we do not have. If you don't have a middle class, you can't build any successful, sustainable society, you know. And most African countries don't realize that. They think they have a middle class, but they don't have a middle class, you know. And that's why the economy, we keep borrowing, because if you had a middle class, the purpose of a middle class is to generate wealth, employ, build businesses, go into entrepreneurship. That's not happening. If there's going to be entrepreneurship, it comes from the West. People from the West come in and they start businesses, and then when they make the money, they take the money out of the country. You see, that doesn't help the African countries. And our leaders, because they get paid, they don't care. And this is why we keep going back to, at least for in Ghana's case, we keep going back to IMF. We have gone to IMF 17 times. Does it make sense to you? If the same factors take us to IMF every single time, what's the excuse for going 17 times? It wouldn't make sense to me, as it doesn't make sense to you. You with me? But it's happening. We just came, we got $3 billion, monies that we could have made just by adding value to cocoa. This doesn't make sense. So there's got to be a point where you say, enough of this nonsense. These guys don't, they cease to think prudently, and you can't have them as fiduciaries of the state if they refuse to think. You need to put yourself into an election which is democratic to remove them, you know. So we just need the country to come to the realization that they're running the country down and dry. And, you know, as soon as they can come to the realization and vote them out, we can have a responsible leadership team take over and run the country as it should. It doesn't make any sense if Africa has all the resources, but we are the biggest beggars in the world. How do you make up for that equation? I mean, I can't make that equation up. So maybe you can make that up, but it doesn't make sense to me. You see? So that's got to change, and we have to change we have to build a totally new Africa. You see, we cannot. Kwame Nkrumah talked about Africa coming together. We cannot come in together. You listen. Look at your phone. I don't know what phone you have now, but you probably have a Samsung, or you have an. If you have an iPhone and I came in there now and I said, you know what, I have a Nokia 3350, take the motherboard of your iPhone and put it on my Nokia 3350, are we going to be able to be compatible? The answer is a big no. That is how we're building the economies in Africa. What sense does that make? Doesn't make any sense to me. Does it make sense to you? You see? So we got to change it. We got to change everything. The motherboard, the structure, the foundation, everything has to go. Bring in a new thinking person with a different set of values for new African youth who has different demands. You see? Build a robust Africa where we're building supercomputers, we're going to space, we're launching space shuttles. You know, we're not even dealing with petrol anymore. We're doing electric. We're building nuclear plants where Africa is not a dark continent anymore. Africa is a lit continent because we've put, you know, nuclear plants together that's giving us 10 times the power that we need. That power is a surplus. These are the things we need to be talking about, not worrying about power. They're worrying about how to win the next election. Come on, get out of here with that mindset.
All right, Mr. Kofi, 2024 is not far away. It's coming. So most African elections, the incumbent or the government, there is always, they like to rig the election. And then how hopeful are you, this election is going to be fair, and then you're going to get a fair shot on this election?
Well, listen, there are certain things you don't have control over. One of the things you don't have control over is, if you're not the government in power, you cannot control the shenanigans that happens during elections. So what you do is what you have control over. What you have control over is to get more people, because you see, even when they rig elections, it has margins. So they could rig election by maybe 5%, 3%, 6%. So if you were to have, 20% more people voting for you, then no matter how much they rig election, you're still within the margins that they don't have an effect. So I don't have control whether they're going to be able to rig it or not. But what I have control over is to tell my story to most people, so that we can have more people into the arena to vote, so that even when they rig elections, it won't have as much effect and we still win.
Good.
That's all you can do.
So totally, it's absolutely understood. So how is your campaign going right now? Is it catching fire in Ghana? And then I see you right now. You are in US. So do you live in diaspora or you live in Ghana? What is your political background behind? And then how is it going on your campaign also inside and outside Ghana?
Yeah, I live in Ghana now. I moved to Ghana in 2019, and I come do meetings and meet with teams. The California team invited me to come to this event, and from here I'll go back to New York. I'll meet with a team there and go. I may go to London. And from there, I go back to Ghana. Our teams are gaining traction. People are coming to terms with the common sense, prudent policies that we are offering. We don't have money to put in hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign, but we have common sense. And that's Africa's biggest problem. 95% of our problems are not competence based. 95% of Africa's problems are common sense based. So if you are applying common sense, we've won already. You see what I'm saying? So it's gaining traction. People are starting to catch on, just like they did with Peter Obi. But then you saw what happened with the elections too, with Peter Obi, where it's been said that there were numerous cases of disenfranchisement. But that's what we have to live with. It's Africa, and we have to do that. But we're moving forward. But we are happy with the traction. We're happy with people coming in who support us, who see the common sense approach, and it's gaining traction. It's gaining traction.
All right, Mr. Kofi. Recently in Africa, we have been seeing so many coups. A lot of military people are coming to power, and then in a lot of countries also, there are a lot of dictators. So where do you see Africa in the coming 5-10 years from now? As a continent.
Well, listen, the most important thing is to take care of our citizens. The best, you talk about threats with security. The best way to take care of our citizens, to take care of our borders, when people have something to hold on to, that they claim their own. They have assets, they have a good lifestyle. They protect themselves. and that's the best security any country can have. You see, but if you have people who don't have anything, they don't have two pennies to rub together, they don't care because they don't own anything. Nothing will affect them. You see, so they become a threat because then when they see something, they don't care to say anything. So the biggest security we can build is to take care of our people. You see, and I believe if we do that and we have the right leaders who are forward thinking, who are ready to build a totally new foundation for a new Africa, Africa will indeed surpass and break all records, that the whole world will come and wonder, what on earth happened here? I'm telling you, we are the cusp of an explosion. And we need the right mix of leaders who understand what we are up against. Not these types of leaders who only worry about how to win elections. No, we need to serve our people. Our people are suffering all over the world. We don't get any respect around the world. It's because even our leaders don't treat us well. You see, we have to be treated like trophies so that the whole world would treat us with respect. We have to have more than enough in our country so that the whole world will come to our doorstep begging for stuff. And that's the mindset.
All right, Mr. Kofi. Right now, as you see, the world is in a different shape. With what's going on in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine is affecting not only Europe but also Africa. Also, there is China is also on the other side, and then we can see this conflict between China, Russia on one side, and then the United States and the European countries. And then African countries seems to get squeezed in between. Some they go to east toward China and Russia, and others went to US. So, how do you think is this global situation affect Africa right now, or will affect it in the near future?
Well, listen, the whole world is de-dollarizing. We know that because now, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa has become more powerful. The Sunnis have joined Saudi Arabia and Iranians. Shiites and the Sunnis have joined. Argentina is joining. Other countries are joining the BRICS because everybody wants to be not controlled by the dollar, as we've seen happen after the Russian-Ukraine war. Russia's dependence on the dollar did to it. So, but the new world order would mean nothing to Africa if we have not gotten our house in order. Think about it. I'll give you an example of Ghana. Ghana has gold. Ghana has oil. Ghana has everything. If the new world order became gold and oil, Ghana is giving away its gold to get oil because we have not built the refineries that we need to have in place to be able to refine our own crude. You see, that's a sad situation. And this is why, when we talk about the leaders who don't have the mental capacity to see, we are actually giving away gold to get oil, which we already have. What sense does that make? Does that make sense to you?
No, not at
So
all.
if the
Not at all.
the new standard became gold, oh well, guess what? We gave it all away. You see, we are allowing cars to get assembled in Ghana. Cars that use petrol, when the whole world is moving away from fossil fuels to renewables, where we should be. We have lithium, where we should be building lithium batteries and thinking about building lithium cars. We actually gave our lithium away, and we are bringing in petrol cars. Does that sound like a leadership a leadership strategy to you, a strategy that's been the good thought has gone in? No. You see? So till Africa recognizes its potential and actually have people who understand how to convert that potential to some serious currency for negotiation, we get nothing. Like I said, the tsunami will happen. We will wake up tomorrow morning and ask ourselves, oh, wow, seems like there was a tsunami here. What really happened? And they would have taken everything and gone because our leaders were sleeping. That's why we need leaders who understand the new world order in terms of what's happening with this. Do we know the de-dollarization will happen in its totality? We don't know. But you don't wait for that to happen before you prepare yourself. You have to have the predisposition to prepare yourself so that if in case it happens, you already put everything in place. You talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. You talk about COVID happening that dispositioned a lot of African countries. Well, if we had put our house in order before COVID happened, before Russia-Ukraine happened, it wouldn't have affected that much. Right? Russia-Ukraine happened, and right in Russia, 22 billionaires were created. The average increase in Russian billionaires' incomes was $600 million. Sick. And then Africa comes, we are thousands of miles away. We come and we say, oh, we are poor because of Russia, Ukraine. Wow. The Russians are creating billionaires, countless millionaires, and we are crying because of Russia, Ukraine. Guess what? Because we didn't put our house in order. When countries are making money from things happening around the world that dispositions people, and we always crying and using that as an excuse why we can't do something, because we have poor thinking leaders, and we need to change that.
All right, Mr. Kofi, I'm kind of finishing my questions, but I want to ask you, one last question, and then give you this opportunity. Why should the Ghanaians vote for you to become their next president? Why should they vote for you?
I'm the only one who thinks the way I do. Listen, with 2024, Ghana right now has over 600 billion cedis of debt. No candidate is talking about how to eradicate the debt. Everybody's talking about how we're going to do this and do that. What are you going to do that with? You're going to go borrow money and do stuff for the people? And then once you finish doing all of that, China will come in and say, we want our money, and then take the country. That's what you want? So what I'm saying is these candidates who are talking about, we want to do this, we want to do this. It's almost like you come home to your wife one day and say, oh, honey, I'm going to buy you a diamond ring, and I'm going to buy you a car, I'm going to buy you this. And your wife looks at you and says, where are you going to find the money to do that? And says, I'm going to borrow that from my neighbor. You're going to borrow money from your neighbor to buy me diamond. You want your neighbor to own your wife? I mean, pretty much, you see what I'm saying? So the point is, we need people, we need to start adding value to the resources that we have, especially human capital, because human capital will always be renewable. Natural resources is finite. At some point, it finishes. And most African leaders have a natural resource consciousness that all they look at to make money is natural resource. What happens when the natural resource finishes? Then what? The whole world comes to a stop because you can't think? No, you can't. You can't have a strategy that is natural resource focused. You have to have a strategy that is human capital focused, because that is always renewable. That's not what our leaders are doing. And this is why I know that I'm the only person who could quantum leap Ghana into the next stratosphere of aggressive, progressive thinking of human excellence. I'm the only one.
All right, Mr. Kofi. So where are you in the polls right now? Do you guys have polls? Is there any other candidates than the current president in the country? How many candidates are hopefuls for this coming election?
Well, there are going to be a few. It's not all watered down yet, but maybe by the time it's all done, I really see myself with two other candidates from the leading parties, NDC and MPP. Nobody else matters because they really don't have any platform of substance to give to the Ghanaian people. Not even the NDC and MPP, who are the governing party and the opposition party right now. They don't have anything to offer Ghanaians. And they would not even include me in the polls because that would be showing me to the Ghanaian people that there is an option better than them. So they will not include me. But we know we are starting to gain traction, and people are, and that's why we got invited to this event. So the people know of us, even though we're not showing up in polls. But anywhere we conduct our polls, we come out leading.
Oh, that's good. So hopefully, on this coming election, I wish you good luck and success. And I hope that if you win this election, you would probably invite me to the Ghanaian presidential palace for in-person interview. Would it be possible?
It wouldn't be. It's not an if I win. It's when I win.
When you win.
Yes.
When you win.
You're coming to Ghana for an interview on me.
On you in person on the presidential palace.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you very much. I really appreciate for coming to ERSAT for this interview. And hopefully we'll have another interview maybe down the road while you are doing your campaign in the future. Thank you again.
By all means, stay well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Good luck.
لو تخينا مسكنو فلنا فريه بلا تفعلنا
سلام أبرح حقن كاروان تركبو تهذا تلتي تلفزيون إرسات كما يكنيهم
مقالة
سيدي أجبرحي نحق فرح نزيفر